In the dark depths of German-occupied territory during World War II, an enigmatic symbol aroused both fear and curiosity. It was a gleaming gorget, crescent-shaped, hanging around the necks of Nazi soldiers, a sinister mark of their ruthless authority. Engraved with intricate details, it not only denoted commitment but also evoked an aura of menacing authority. Initially, these wearers of the gorget, members of the Feldgendarmerie, Germany's military police, were assigned simple tasks. However, as the war dragged on, their role grew darker and more oppressive. By 1943, they were tasked with maintaining discipline within the ranks of the Wehrmacht, becoming the guardians of loyalty, the sentinels against any sign of dissent. The significance of the gorget became obscure, a threatening reminder of the forced cohesion within the German ranks. Rumors began to spread in the shadows, attributing ominous nicknames like Jakettenhund v. chained dogs, and a Heldenklauer v. hero thieves, which hovered like specters over war-torn Germany on the brink of collapse. The history of the Feldgendarmerie is an intricate tale of discipline, transition, and at times, abuse of power. Its dark chapters echo with the suspense of a nation teetering on the edge of the abyss. In the old days of Germanic armies, marshals, whose title came from the words for horse and servant, were the guardians of order on the battlefield. Initially, their mission was to care for the army's horses, essential for moving large troops. Over time, however, their role expanded to include administrative and policing responsibilities. In 1312, a royal proclamation granted marshals considerable power, and in the 16th century, Germany borrowed the title of rector from France. Defined in historical texts, a rector not only punished errant soldiers, but also supervised wrongdoers, acting as judge, jury, and executioner. The year 1577 marked the emergence of mounted police units in the Germanic regions, known as police dragoons and hussars. In the 18th century, King Frederick William I introduced an innovation by directing his hussars to tasks such as capturing deserters instead of using them primarily in battles. In 1740, these troops formally embraced the expanded title of Feldjägerkorps, taking on responsibilities such as traffic control, message delivery, and royal protection. As their importance grew, the troops diversified their functions, involving themselves in activities like route mapping and investigations, playing essential roles in both administrative and military law enforcement. The 19th century brought significant changes. In 1800, the Prussian army established the Armee Gendarmerie, which inherited the functions of the old hussar units, especially during the Napoleonic Wars. Between 1810 and 1812, regions such as Saxony, Württemberg, and Bavaria decided to create rural police forces, following the example of Napoleon's French gendarmerie. This change reflected the transformations in Europe's geopolitical landscape, a reflection of a continent on the brink of great changes. With the arrival of the 20th century, new challenges arose for the Feldgendarmerie. During the Franco-Prussian War in 1870, they established formal units to maintain order, patrol battlefields, prevent looting, and even administer field courts-martial. These responsibilities were essential in times of conflict. After the end of the Franco-Prussian War, the military police units were dissolved, taking years to be re-established. With the outbreak of World War I, the German army formalized about 33 companies of Feldgendarmerie, each with approximately 60 men and non-commissioned officers. Their functions included searching for weapons, enemy soldiers, and spies in urban and rural areas, as well as transporting prisoners. Before the end of the war in 1918, the number of Feldgendarmerie units had increased to 115, primarily composed of former sergeants from the civil police and cavalry soldiers. These teams operated in three-man patrols, playing a crucial role during a tumultuous period in European history. After the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany faced new challenges regarding its military force. With the imposed restrictions, all units were dissolved, leaving the Reichswehr without a specific branch of military police. Regular soldiers had to assume these functions. However, with the rise of Adolf Hitler to power in 1933, a new era began. He allowed the reassembly of various police formations of the Third Reich, bringing back the Feldgendarmerie, among others. These organizations sometimes operated in a chaotic hierarchy, but this would change. The Feldgendarmerie stood out for its rigorous training in infantry tactics. Besides being skilled soldiers, they held extensive police powers, collaborating with various entities such as the secret field police and local military and civilian leaders. With the enhancement of their skills and authority, intensive training programs were established, preparing an increasingly organized and feared force. Behind the scenes of this reorganization, dark secrets were hidden. As the Feldgendarmerie became more powerful, rumors of brutal methods and sinister actions began to circulate, casting a shadow of fear over those who dared to challenge the new order. The construction of the elite military police began with the inauguration of the specialized school in Potsdam, a bold initiative of the German Feldgendarmerie. Located near Berlin, this school became the epicenter of training for the growing military force. But it didn't stop there. With the expansion of German territory after the occupation of Czechoslovakia and Poland, new academies emerged in strategic locations such as Prague and Litzmannstadt Gornau. In these institutions, future military police officers were subjected to an extensive and detailed curriculum, covering everything from laws and regulations to combat techniques and first aid. The training was so intense that many dropped out along the way. In a one-year period, dozens of police aspirants abandoned the courses, unable to cope with the pressure and demands. Of the 219 who began training in 1935, only 89 managed to advance. After the initial tests, the remaining candidates were assigned to Feldgendarmerie units to gain practical experience. It was an arduous and challenging journey, where only the most dedicated and resilient survived. These new units of the Feldgendarmerie underwent rigorous infantry training and were given vast police responsibilities. When civilian police officers were transferred to the Feldgendarmerie, they received military ranks that reflected their former positions in the police hierarchy. With highly trained personnel and an efficient command structure, their uniforms soon became symbols of authority and prestige. The Feldgendarmerie, while adhering to the traditional aesthetics of the Wehrmacht, incorporated unique elements into their uniforms. Red-orange details adorned their peaked caps, collar patches, and shoulder boards. On the upper left sleeve, there was a stylized eagle surrounded by an intricate wreath of oak leaves, a powerful symbol. A distinctive feature of the uniform was the brown cuff on the left sleeve, highlighted with gray details and decorated with the inscription E Feldgendarmerie in Silver Gothic script. However, the most striking piece of the uniform was the service gorget. This crescent-shaped metal pendant, inspired by steel collars worn during medieval combat, stood out as a defining element of the Wehrmacht's military police. The design of the gorget paid homage to medieval protective equipment, similar to those used by the Feldgendarmerie in World War I. These soldiers, with their imposing uniforms and intensive training, patrolled occupied territories, ensuring discipline and order. They were feared and respected figures, moving silently through streets and roads, always vigilant for any signs of dissent. The suspense grew with each step they took, as the local population wondered if they would be the next to be approached. As the war progressed, the presence of the Feldgendarmerie became even more crucial. They were not only guardians of order, but also living symbols of the Third Reich's authority. Their constant patrols and relentless vigilance kept everyone on edge, creating an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty. The actions of these military police officers, combined with their distinctive and intimidating appearance, ensured that the shadow of Nazi power loomed over every corner of occupied Europe. The curved steel plate bore a central national emblem, firmly fastened by rivets. Around it, a dark gray scroll displayed the word Feldgendarmerie written in Latin letters. A simple steel chain left the gorget hanging around the wearer's neck. Although they were called Kettenhund or chained dogs by regular German soldiers due to their notoriety, the gorget quickly became a powerful symbol of authority and control. From the beginning of the war, the German Feldgendarmerie played a crucial role, operating in all theaters of operations. Each Wehrmacht field army had a Feldgendarmerie battalion, usually consisting of 3 officers, 41 non-commissioned officers, and 20 men. Armed with Walther pistols adapted for police use, They also utilized heavy weaponry, such as MG-42 and MG-34 machine guns, often mounted on their vehicles, which ranged from motorcycles to field cars. In addition to standard military police functions, the Jagdhunde were also responsible for maintaining order in Nazi-occupied territories. Their tasks behind the front lines were varied and vital, controlling traffic and the local population, capturing enemy stragglers, and searching people and properties. They could requisition the help of any other military or civilian personnel. When direct combat ended, the Feldgendarmerie quickly assumed the role of temporary municipal police. They dealt with guerrillas, gathered refugees and prisoners, ensured the delivery of civilian weapons, and organized civilian labor. The suspense was constant, as their presence brought a mixture of order and fear. The local population lived under constant surveillance, never knowing when they would be approached or searched. The rigorous training that Feldgendarmerie members received was designed to prepare them for any situation. From weapons handling to combat tactics and police procedures, they were trained to act with efficiency and authority. Each mission was a test of their skills, and failure was not an option. The suspense increased with each operation, especially in occupied areas where local resistance was strong. The Jagdhunde had to be constantly alert, ready to face ambushes or insurgencies. The nights were particularly tense, with shadows moving stealthily and whispers of conspiracy echoing through the silent streets. The gorget, with its shiny steel plate and sturdy chain, was more than a mere accessory. It represented the law and order of the Nazi regime, a constant reminder of the control exerted by the Feldgendarmerie. For regular soldiers and the local population, seeing a Jagdhunde with their gorget meant that authority was present and that any deviation would be severely punished. On every front, in every mission, the Feldgendarmerie was there, enforcing order with a firm hand. The suspense and tension accompanying their presence were palpable, and their reputation as Germany's chained dogs only grew. With their complex and risky tasks, they became a feared and respected force, symbolizing the power of the Third Reich. If a Feldgendarmerie officer deviated from the strict rules, they were quickly sent back to their original post, bearing the shame of their failure. However, the influence of these officers extended far beyond their daily tasks. In some situations, even their uniforms played critical roles on the battlefield. The Feldgendarmerie had the authority to pass through roadblocks, checkpoints, and secure areas due to the nature of their duties. These men had precedence over all other soldiers, regardless of rank or branch of service. However, this authority could become a double-edged sword, as was the case in one specific episode. During World War II, on the island of Crete in Greece, the United Kingdom Special Operations Executive planned a daring operation: the kidnapping of General Heinrich Kryp, the new commander of the German forces in the region. Unbeknownst to Kryp, Allied forces, led by Major Patrick Leigh Fermor and Captain Bill Stanley Moss, were closely monitoring his movements. With the help of Cretan guerrillas, they devised a plan to capture the general and transport him from Crete to Egypt. The mission was fraught with dangers, but Fermor and Moss had a few tricks up their sleeves. One of the most important was the acquisition of Feldgendarmerie uniforms, complete with the iconic gorget, which conferred deceptive authority. Dressed as German officers, they set up a fake checkpoint near Kryp's residence in Knossos. Tension filled the air as the general's car approached the improvised checkpoint. Fermor and Moss, in their impeccable Feldgendarmerie uniforms, awaited the right moment. When the car stopped, they acted swiftly and precisely, subduing the general and his driver in a matter of seconds. The suspense was palpable, every second counted, and one wrong move could have ruined the entire operation. With Kryp in their custody, the group faced the daunting task of escaping the island without being captured by German patrols. Adrenaline ran high as they moved stealthily through Crete's rugged terrain, always one step ahead of their pursuers. The tension increased with each night spent in improvised hideouts, as time seemed to drag on slowly. The use of Feldgendarmerie uniforms not only ensured Kryp's capture, but also highlighted the ingenuity and bravery of the Allies. The successful operation was a significant blow to German morale and a brilliant example of how cunning and disguise could turn the tide of war. This episode showed that even amidst the chaos of war, intelligence and courage could transform uniforms of oppression into tools of liberation. The operation in Crete remains a testament to the audacity and indomitable spirit of those who fought against tyranny. The Feldgendarmerie, in addition to their regular duties, had the responsibility of overseeing the Strafbataillons, or penal battalions. These units were composed of soldiers who, after being court-martialed, had their executions postponed and were sent to these punitive divisions. In the final days of the Third Reich, even minor infractions could lead a recruit or soldier to be incorporated into a Strafbataillon, falling under the constant watch of the feared Kettenhund. With the imminent collapse of the Nazi Empire, the Feldgendarmerie was increasingly deployed to the front lines. Despite their poor reputation, many members of this force received various military decorations. As the Allied forces tightened their grip on Germany, the reality of a reckoning became inevitable. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, the Allied forces began dismantling the numerous organizations of the Third Reich. However, many members of the Feldgendarmerie, especially those not captured by the Soviets, were repurposed for policing duties by the Western Allies. An officer of the United States 101st Airborne Division recalled how he assigned ex-members of the Feldgendarmerie to guard German officers in charge of supervising German prisoners of war. This role reversal would have been unthinkable just a few months earlier. An even more intriguing account mentions the British 8th Corps in Schleswig-Holstein. It is said that they assembled a complete regiment of Feldgendarmerie to ensure discipline and order in the demobilization centers. This Feldgendarmerie Regiment Corps was composed of 4 battalions and a staff battalion, all formed by volunteers, many of whom were former police officers. The irony and suspense of this transformation are palpable. Men who were once symbols of Nazi oppression and control were converted into guardians of order under the new Allied rulers. It is a change that highlights the complexity and unpredictability of war and its consequences. These events show how power and authority can quickly change hands, and how those who were once feared can become necessary in a new context. The Feldgendarmerie, once hated and feared, found a new role in a world being rebuilt, illustrating the unexpected twists that history often holds for us. Identified by an armband bearing the title Gewehrmachtordnungstroop, which translates to Armed Forces Order Troops, these men stood out clearly. Fully armed, they received no monetary compensation for their service, but rather increased food rations, a vital necessity in the post-war hardships. In June 1946, more than a year after the official end of World War II, the remnants of the Feldgendarmerie, the military police of the Third Reich, were the last to surrender their weapons. This surrender marked the end of the darkest chapter in German military history, conclusively ending the presence of these forces on the streets and fields of war-ravaged Europe. The scene was tense. Men who once embodied Nazi control and authority now stood disarmed, relinquishing the last symbol of their power. Each weapon surrendered was a step closer to the definitive end of a regime that had caused so much suffering and destruction. These soldiers, once feared and hated, now found themselves in a paradoxical position. The recognition they received did not come in the form of medals or traditional honors, but rather in the form of food rations, a clear sign of the hardships and priorities of the time. The final surrender of weapons by the Feldgendarmerie was not just a symbolic act, but also a crucial transition for post-war Germany. It represented the last surrender of an organization that had long enforced order and control under a tyrannical regime. This moment was a relief and a milestone for all involved, a necessary step towards reconstruction and peace. With the Feldgendarmerie dismantled, the final chapter of the Third Reich was officially closed. The last men of this elite force, who once imposed discipline with an iron fist, now found themselves without weapons, without power, and with an uncertain future ahead. History moved forward, but the scars left by war and the oppression of the Feldgendarmerie remained as enduring reminders of what was and should never be repeated. With the Feldgendarmerie dismantled, the final chapter of the Third Reich was officially closed. The last men of this elite force, who once imposed discipline with an iron fist, now found themselves without weapons, without power, and with an uncertain future ahead. History moved forward, but the scars left by war and the oppression of the Feldgendarmerie remained as enduring reminders of what was and should never be repeated. If you enjoyed this narration and want to follow more gripping and detailed stories about wars, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. That way, you won't miss any of our future narrations. Until next time.